Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Beaten Path. Today we're traveling back to Minneapolis, Minnesota to visit the home studio of David Stanoch. David is a top call drummer in the Twin Cities for both live and studio work, but beyond his career as a performer, he's probably most well known as an educator. He served on the faculty of McNally Smith College of Music for 27 years and has given master classes across North America at events like PASIC and NAMM. For many, he's probably most recognized from his book, Mastering the Tables of Time, which was named the #1 educational book by Modern Drummer magazine in 2009. He's built an amazing home studio for practice, recording, rehearsing, and most importantly, teaching online and in person for the David Stanoch School of Drumming. Before we get too far into the video, I want to remind you that I'm creating new episodes in this series monthly, so make sure to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all of my future video releases. And without any further delay, let's take a look inside David Stanoch's home studio.
Hey, Mike, what a surprise.
Hey, thanks for having me today,
Yeah,
Dave.
man. Hey, welcome. This is the David Stanoch School of Drumming and Bruno's Workshop Studios. Come on down, check it out. Much like Pachyderm Studios, if you're familiar with that, here in Minnesota, where people like Nirvana and stuff have recorded, we've got the standard issue 1970s orange carpet and, wood paneling, but everything here is a renovation in progress because this is actually the house I grew up in, which I reacquired a few years ago, and I'm in the process of renovating, and this is where I do my work. So welcome.
Yeah, and I think you were telling me off camera too that not only did you grow up here, but I mean, this is the room where you first really played drums and learned your craft.
Yeah, my brother had a garage band that really was a basement band, but Matt Barber, a great drummer who's still playing in the Twin Cities, they had a rock band. They'd rehearse right here. Matt had a Ludwig kit, I think it was black. First time I sat down behind a set of drums, I was watching him, and it was literally right here. It's funny, it's a full circle kind of thing, that this is that spot.
Well, to start out, as I walked down here, I saw a whole stack of drums and cases, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing
Right.
that's all of your gigging equipment.
Yeah, it's some of it. I'm a Yamaha endorser, and I've got Yamaha stuff all over the place, but the kits that I take out on the road and in town mostly are just ready to go here, which is a battery of club custom drums. I bought 3 different size bass drums and different size toms so I can mix and match and build different kits of different sizes. And then I've got a stage custom kit that I take out on the road with Sean. So that's what we have here, a couple different stick bags. I'm a stickler for the Peter Erskine standalone bag, which I have 3 of. And I have 2 different ones ready to go for different types of gigs and whatever else. And also being a proud Remo endorser, I have a nice stock of Remo heads, old and new, and I've got a bunch of replacements for a bunch of stuff now that I've just gotten off tour. There's a 3x13 Ludwig Superphonic Piccolo in there, and a Steve Gadd signature metal snare drum with the wood hoops, which is like my favorite snare drum of all time, and a newer 6.5 aluminum recording custom, which is great. And then this is a mahogany rock tour snare drum, which is really warm and fat. And there's a Steve Jordan signature snare in there, the 13, and this is a maple one. And then up here, I'm an LP endorser, so I have a wide selection of cowbells, all the different tambourines and congas and the cajon. But I just keep things handy for recording here, or have to run out the door for a gig. I can see what I've got, and it's ready to go. And then here's my little area for all the different cymbals I have bagged up. I've been a Paiste endorser since 1996, but everything's in the bags here, and I like that they're side by side because I can get in and out of them easily. And I've got a guitar stand with a few favorites. There's more like that in the studio. And I got my computer, and I got my printer, and I got a video thing, and then over here I practice my timbales. I got these Tito Puente LP timbales that were actually a gift from Gordy Knudsen, who was my boss during the 27 years that I was on the faculty of McNally Smith College of Music in Minneapolis. And so he's always been very generous to me. And so, you do rudimental things on the timbales, all the great timbale players do, like you learn on the snare, but, it's a completely different vibe. I rehearse a lot in this room. We've got the piano, and people bring their amps and stuff. I'm using the Yamaha DTX electric drums for a lot of that because we can rehearse at very low volume, and they have really incredible kind of, dynamic range and different sounds. This is a flexible room. It's in a bit of a shambles right now because I'm reorganizing everything, but this is part of my library. Some of it's in there too. I've got a lifetime of collecting study resources, and I worked in education for many years. And then, of course, I was also a student of Elliot Fine and worked for many years with Marvin Dahlgren, who together wrote Four-Way Coordination. And Elliot and I were very close. And when Elliot passed away, his son Milo said, "Come and look at the library and take whatever you want. He would want you to have it." And so my library is an amazing combination of my resources and Elliot's, and it's really just a nice way to feel his presence with me, because we were so close, and so that's kind of what happens here. This is sort of the office, the rehearsal space, the storage area, and sort of the lounge. I kind of like the low lighting and the vibe, just the chill kind of energy with the lighting and stuff like that, and then when we go into the studio, it's a different kind of thing.
Well, I think this room is like a great testament to all the varied things you do and experiences you've had. The way you describe it, there's so much efficiency at the same time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and we discussed this a little bit earlier too. I mean, I have more stuff than I can use, but I'm not a collector in the sense that I think, a lot of my friends are. I don't worry about, I've got plenty of different snare drums, and I've got plenty of different kits and drums and stuff like that, but I'm not too concerned with this vintage sound or that vintage sound. I like gear that's in good working order and sounds good, and so anywhere I go where that's available, I'm happy. But that's also another reason I'm very proud to be with Yamaha, who I've been talking about, because they make incredible sounding drums and they're incredibly consistent, and everything is simple. Snare stands, hardware, bass drum pedals. I'm into practical stuff because I've been out on the road and had the fancy stuff break down, and you're stuck. You can't get a replacement, but some of this stuff, you could actually go into a hardware store and get what you need to replace it when it's simple. And so vintage stuff is great. It's all cool. I admire all that, but it's just not my thing. I'm a player, and I just like to play. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about much else, and when it comes to technology and recording, I'm learning more and more about that, especially with my teaching studio and my home recording. But again, it's not the kind of stuff that comes natural to me. I try to surround myself with people who know what they're doing.
Well, now that we've seen this kind of space where students might walk through and get the inspiration, can we check out this room where they get down to business and learning?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I first opened the studio after McNally Smith College of Music closed at the end of 2017, everything was in here. So this was the studio, the teaching studio. But then eventually the idea of wanting to create a more soundproof, or closer to it environment became the picture. And where we're going into now was my dad's workshop, and he was a master with tools and buzzsaws and woodworking and metalworking, and he was a dentist, so he had great motor skills. And I decided to take his space and repurpose it. So we punched this hole in the wall to make this door so people could come right through just as they had come into this room. So this is Bruno's Workshop Studios. And this space is exactly 1 year old. The room was completed literally on January 1st of 2024. So I guess here, this would be primarily the student kit, and this is a hip gig hybrid. It's got drums from the original Manu Cache hip gig line, and then some of the stage custom hip stuff. Some Paiste cymbals, of course, and it's got a Sabian miking system on it. This is kind of like the Blue Note style setup. There's a bass drum thing, and in here for this part of the kit, and over here, works great. And then the EAD10 is set up here. When I opened my online school, which was ahead of COVID, beginning or mid 2018, after the school closed, my first half a dozen students that enrolled were international students. My first was a great drummer from Germany named Benedict Hess, and so I see these people online. So Dom Famularo set me up with Jim Toscano, a great drummer from New York, and it allowed me to get the sound together and a video system. So I've got a front camera, hello, and you can kind of get a sense of what I'm doing when I'm playing, and we can communicate. It's my overhead cam. So if you really want to see what both hands and how I'm getting around the drums ergonomically from the same position you would be in, and then foot cam. It's all there to try to provide the most intimate personal lesson, like my local students who sit right there and can see anything that I'm doing here. Also, particularly more so with on-site students, I've got everything mic'd up and going into Logic, so the system there, the PDM system, is all rigged into this channel, the AAD is into this channel. I can put tracks, we can play along with clicks, or just play. Recording your practice and listening back can literally take 50% off your development time. So what's beautiful about it is, they can play and I can give them some feedback, but then, it's like, well, you don't have to take my word for it, listen to yourself, and let's figure out how it's going, because again, to me, as an educator working with my students, any one thing that we're working on always falls into only two categories. It's either working or it needs work. They say we're accompanists. By and large, that is true, but it's also true that the band is only as good as its drummer.
You obviously have a more advanced setup than is needed for someone who's looking to take lessons or give lessons in a long distance manner, but it's never been easier than today to get set up.
That's right.
20 years ago, if someone wanted to study with you, they had to fly out here if they're from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right.
And now there's no excuse.
When I started thinking about going this direction, which I started thinking about while I was still on the faculty at McNally, just because I realized at some point I would want to do this in some kind of shape or form. And this technology, the local drum teacher is now global.
Yeah.
And without all that added expense. Now, I still have people that do travel. I was telling you, I've got people that come from Winnipeg and Sioux Falls and Eau Claire and different places who want to be here physically, and that's great. But, we can turn on the cameras here, and I can meet you anywhere. I've got students in Germany and England and Vietnam and in the Netherlands. It's amazing.
Well, and we're in Minnesota, and like me in Wisconsin, sometimes the snow might hold you back from having your lesson in person, and this is a quick fix to
That's right.
being halted like that.
It comes in handy with my local students, and it certainly came in handy that way during COVID, because even the local students went online. It wasn't like I was out of work waiting for Uncle Sam to help out with the bills and then think about having to invest into something like this. I was able to do it before that happened, and that definitely helped me support my family,
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So then on this side, over here, I'll talk to you about this a little bit because I'm proud of all this. When I was senior in high school, I had the great fortune, and it's a long story, but I got to, I don't know if you can get that, but I got to perform in my senior year of high school with my jazz ensemble with the great Ed Shaughnessy, who in those days was the drummer in the Tonight Show band with Doc Severinsen on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. That was 1980. Got my Walnut Gretsch kit, and Ed's got his Ludwig kit that they sent up for him from Chicago, and I set up for him and started a relationship with Ed that lasted for the rest of his lifetime. After he passed, two friends of mine, one, a great drummer who lives in Los Angeles, who's originally from the East Coast, named Jimmy Paxson. He bought Ed's practice pad. This was Ed's daily Ralph Pace Jr. practice pad that Ed worked out on every day. And Ed's family brought a lot of stuff to Pro Drum in Hollywood to unload. And Jimmy bought this and thought I should have it and just mailed it to me out of the blue. And I got to tell you, man, there's so much energy in this pad. It has a vibration of its own. And so I like standing up to play. I've got a snare drum and a stand from Yamaha that's tall enough. And then I happened to mention the name of my first student, Benedict Hess from Germany. He came to Los Angeles once on his way to PASIC and stopped at Pro Drum, and from the same collection, he brought me a pair of Ed's sticks, and I had seen these before because I did some teching for Ed, because Doc was Pop's conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra for many years while I was growing up. Like I set up Ed's drum for him when we played in high school, I would also tech for him sometimes when he came to orchestra hall. So I was used to the fact that he had these ProMark sticks with this wrap, and you could tell this is the left-hand stick because the wrap's in a different spot for his traditional grip and keep his hands from sweating. And he's a very powerful player. But so I've got this pair of, Ed's sticks, Ed's pad, and I like to come and sit here in the morning and do some Wilcox and stuff, and then go over there and do some timbali stuff. And so that's kind of a fun thing. Here's a autographed copy of a reissue of Freedom Now Suite that Max autographed for me when I was studying with him back in 1982. And it's just inspiring to look at it. This, of course, is a classic album that I grew up playing all the charts off, Basie Straight Ahead, so I just like keeping that out.
I think that album is probably one of the most significant in high school jazz education.
Exactly right, exactly right. My senior jazz concert where we played with Ed, we did 5 tunes off that record. I had this record when I was a kid before I had ever seen a big band chart, and I memorized everything. And then when I saw the charts, I was so confused. I'm like, okay, this isn't anything like what Harold Jones is playing. I mean, the foundations are there, but it's a rest on one, but he's playing bang on one. So I started to figure out how it all worked, and then Elliot helped me fill in the blanks, but that album was instrumental in helping me kind of navigate that type of learning and reading in my career, which came in really handy. So there's this spot, and then over here is the kit. Now, as I'm fond of saying, I'm a very proud Yamaha endorser, but this being my dad's workshop, right now I have up this Stetson drum set, kind of a B-line kit from Japan. And this Stetson kit I got when I was in college and got my first house gig and needed to leave a drum set. This was a silver sparkle kit with regular, metal hoops. But my dad, in this workshop that he had, and I decided to refurbish it at a certain point because the drums sounded good, but it was just fading away and locking up. And so replaced all the hardware that we could. These are the original mounts. And Gordy got me hooked up with John Good at DW at that time, because it's well before I was a Yamaha endorser. And he was able to special order these wood hoops for me. And the reason they had to be special ordered is because there's only 6 lugs on every drum. I mean, that's kind of common with an 8x12 tom, but not the other drums. I checked out some different wraps, and this was the prettiest of what they had. So I thought, well, that's kind of a classic look. So I call it the Bruno kit. That was my dad's name, just like the workshop here. It's very sentimental that way. And I got a beautiful selection of, the Paiste cymbals and the mics, and everything right now is going into my Focusrite, and I've got, Logic again on my laptop. It's been easy to do tracks, and I'm also getting into something new with the people at Wegner, with my work with Sean Johnson, where we're working with this new Lutefish hardware, which is designed for latency-free remote live recording. And we've been beta testing this with them in the past, and this is a new level where they have the product out and a website up, which is like a community kind of thing, and we're getting ready to do some new sessions with it. It's going to be interesting to see how that figures into everything, and I'm building more resources with the help of my oldest son, Lewis, as we go, because he's really sharp on all that stuff. Very busy roster of students. I think I have 52, 53 active students. Many of those are weekly, and I'm almost at capacity, so I'm also using these resources to create online content that'll be coming in the coming year, because I have a lot that I want to share, and I have other things in the works, but I don't have a lot of time. I'm gigging a lot, I'm recording a lot, I'm teaching a lot, and so trying to find time to get all this stuff done can be tricky. It can be tricky just to find time to practice.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time today and letting us come into your space. If people want to reach out to you, whether that be for in-person or virtual lessons, what's the best way to follow you and learn more about the Dave Stanoch School of Drumming?
Sure. Well, there's a website, davidstanochschoolofdrumming.com, and so that has anything that you might want to know about what goes on here. And if you want to get a hold of me on a more personal level, my Gmail is easy. It's davidstanoch@gmail.com, and I'm on Facebook as David Stanoch, and there's also a David Stanoch School of Drumming page. I'm on Instagram, Drummin' Daddy Dave, which my children named me, and also David Stanoch School of Drumming.
All right. Well, thanks again for all the time, and we'll see you around.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care, everybody.